Okay, hello. Happy restorative yoga practice to you. My name is Tessa. In case you're new to me, welcome to your practice. This is all about being comfortable and cozy and just supporting yourself to the best of your ability. So some days I like to take this practice physically like into my bed, which you're more than welcome to do today. The one prop in particular that I'd really like you to have is wall space. So now don't worry about like rearranging your house if wall space is hard to come by. A couple of things that work alternatively are a couch, like the base of your couch. You can slide your yoga mat up to that. And then, like I mentioned, a bed, a headboard would work. So your wall space would be your headboard and, you know, the cushion of your mattress. And so you're gonna need, as usual, blankets and pillows. And we're gonna start out by actually just taking our legs up the wall. You can have, especially if you're gonna be on the surface of a floor like I am, you can have a blanket already laid out for your back body. So taking it out and just kind of supporting the back body with a little bit of warmth and comfort. Here's how I like to get legs up the wall. Regardless of what prop you're using, I get into a fetal position, so my sits bones get in contact with the wall, and then I roll onto my shoulder and hip. I'm like in fetal position, and then I roll until both of my sits bones are in contact with the wall. I'm stretching my legs up. Kind of wiggle my sits bones right and left until I feel rather equal. And then just maybe take your arms out to the side. You could spread your arms wide and start to settle in here. This is such a great way to give your body a break from either standing while you're working or sitting in a chair while you're working. So you're completely reversing blood flow, oxygen, the way that you're feeding your vital organs, your internal organs, and your brain. Reversing gravity even, right? So feet above the heart, feet above the head. If you need to make any adjustments, please always feel free to do that. And then once you feel relatively settled, you can be comfortable, you can be still. We'll start to deepen the breath here. One thing I'll note is that if you're not used to taking your legs up the wall like this, the feet or the toes can kind of tingle, they can go numb. That's normal. And if it becomes too much, you can always just bend your knees, slide your feet down the wall. You can let your thighs rest on your belly until you're ready to take your feet back up the wall. So we'll take about 3 more minutes here to really allow the body time to arrive. What do I mean by that? I mean, physically, mentally, emotionally. Let yourself settle and become heavy. So you start to release tension, release gripping, release any holding on. So one more thing I'll say about this version of legs up the wall is if you are someone who has fairly tight posterior chain, and the posterior chain is the back body. So like hamstrings or glutes or low back, this is a great shape to do for you. You might even notice if you're feeling any stretch sensation along those parts of the body. You could spend 5 days, not 5 days, well, yes, 5 days, but what I was trying to say is you could spend 5 minutes each day in this shape getting a nice passive stretch for the back body, glutes, hamstrings, even low back sometimes. Just depends on where you're tight. And take one more breath here. And so from this position, we'll just simply take our legs wide. Now, depending on what kind of space you're working with, if this isn't possible for whatever reason, like if you're using a couch, you can, or even if you aren't using a couch, you could always bend your knees and let your knees go wide. So now, instead of legs are straight, bending my knees, resting my heels on the wall. What we're looking for in this shape is a little bit of sensation along the inner thigh border. Okay, so not the knee joint. If you're feeling this in the knee, bend your knees until you start to feel the sensation along the inner thigh. Let's breathe deeply here. If you're not used to holding still for a period of time, I kind of consider this the dis-ease of our culture. We are always on the go. It's hard to be still, right? What happens when we become still? Sometimes this brings some level of anxiety because when we're in motion, when we're in that fight flight state, when we're in motion, there's this story that we're safer. We're safe because we're always aware of what's going on and we're always ready to take that next step to keep ourselves safe. When we become still, it's almost like fight or flight might tell us, maybe this isn't true for you, but you might resonate. Fight flight might tell us that if we're being still, that level of anxiety that's always there might come up full force. Because what happens when we're still, we might become the victim of some sort of something, right? Whatever it is. And maybe you have this underlying narrative that being still isn't safe. But if you stay still long enough, parasympathetic nervous system will kick in, your rest and digest. The breath will start to deepen. And one of the telltale signs of rest and digest is the actual digestive system. If your stomach starts to gurgle, any little sounds the tummy makes, really good indicator that you're starting to feel safe, that you're starting to settle into stillness. If you're able to here for these last 5 breaths, can you take it into the belly? The breath, feel the belly expand on your inhale. Feel the belly soften on your exhale. Let's take our hands to the outer edges of the legs, help your legs come together. You can point and flex through the feet. We're still going to utilize the wall, but we're going to scoot away from the wall until we can make a 90-degree angle with our legs. So I'll show you what I mean by that. So I'm just going to scoot away from the wall a little bit, come back to my back, plant my feet. I'm going to take a peek at my knees. They're right on top of my hips. And then I'll take figure 4 from here. Right ankle on top of left knee. So now working with the outer hips. Now I like to add a little bit of movement. I like to rock a little bit side to side here first when I enter this shape. This does a couple of things for the joint of the hip. First, it increases blood flow. And second, softens the tissue. So if tissue is like a combination of fascia, muscle, tendons, ligaments, all that stuff that holds the thigh bone in place in the socket. If that's kind of stuck together like saran wrap, if you could visualize saran wrap kind of getting tangled, it tends to be tighter. So adding a little bit of gentle rocking movement helps kind of loosen things up, that proverbial saran wrap. Then you can start to settle into stillness. Deepening the breath, awareness to the belly with the inhale, expand, with the exhale, soften. For these last few breaths here, you can be still if you've come to a comfortable place, or what I'm doing is adding a very slight rock of the pelvis. So in my figure 4, legs are staying the same. I'm rocking to the tip of my tailbone, the low back slightly lifts, and then I'm pressing my low back down and the tailbone slightly lifts. It's a very small movement, like only a few inches, even less, of a pelvic tilt. Try that movement one more time. And then let's release that right foot back to the wall. You can just slide the feet up the wall a little bit if you want to. You can straighten out through the legs. Wave the feet side to side. And then if you did straighten out the legs, rebend the knees, feet on the wall, knees stacked right on top of the hips. So if you've come away from the wall at all, scoot back a little bit. 90-degree angle with the legs. Let's take that left ankle on top of right thigh. And then maybe you add that little gentle rock side to side. Now, eventually you might settle towards stillness. You know that you can continue to rock if that's feeling best, if your body is calling for that little bit of movement. This is an invitation to notice when it's nervous, anxious energy that's causing you to move, or when it's just that really wondrous exploration of the body in this particular space and time. Can you slow down enough to notice the difference between the two? And the work here, as you find that stillness, is to ground and connect to the breath, the belly breath. For these last moments here, about 5 breaths, if you want to add that pelvic tilt, tip of the tailbone, and then the low back. Just a really subtle movement of the pelvis in your figure 4. Okay, when you're ready, release that left foot. You can slide the legs up the wall if you want. You can wave the feet side to side. Any movement really here is welcome. Maybe even a happy baby if that's something that calls to you. Okay, so for our next shape, we're going to take it in, excuse me, to a back to a back bend. Now, there's two different ways. I'm going to give you an option to explore your back bend practice today. Back bends are great for like that midday lull where you're feeling really sleepy and you want like a nice jolt of, not a jolt, but a really nice subtle energy boost. Like the caffeine without the jitters. Back bends are great for that. So option number one, you can take it forward onto your belly. And then if you're on a hard surface of the floor, you can pad the hip bones with a blanket, coming into Sphinx. Okay, so here's option number one. If you have a block at home or stack of pillows, you can stack something underneath the forehead and let your forehead rest on that. You can also just let your chin, like what I'm doing, draw into your chest and let your head kind of hang heavy. Option number two, you'd flip back over onto your back. For this one, you're going to need something underneath the pelvis. So folded blanket would work, pillows would work, blocks would work if you have them at home. And all you'll do as you come onto your back, bending your knees, planting your feet, is slide that prop underneath the sacrum. So space below the low back, right above the glutes. That's where the sacrum is. The option with this shape is to either keep knees bent and feet planted, or you could stretch your legs out. So it's like you're rainbowing your body over this prop. If you're not sure what you want to do, you can try them both and then choose which one you think is going to serve you best today. Sometimes you don't know until you try. One thing I will say is if you were taking this shape that I'm in right now with my legs stretched out over that prop, my belly's facing up towards the ceiling, it can be a lot on the low back. And you can always rebend the knees and plant your feet if it's getting to be something that's adding more tension, is when I recommend rebending the knees or backing out a little bit or a lot. If you're in Sphinx and your forehead is resting on a prop, you could roll the head right to left, really gentle with that. A little myofascial release for the skin at the forehead. You could do that same thing lying on your back, little myofascial release for the occipital ridge, base of the spine, or base of the skull rather. Wherever you are, deep belly breaths. Can you connect to the breath? Can you ground through the breath? Take one more breath where you are. And then we'll start to back out. So if you're on your belly in Sphinx, you can press into your hands and knees and move back to child's pose. If you're stretched out over your prop, rebend your knees and plant your feet. Take a beat there. And then when it feels wise to do so, you can lift your hips up and move the prop out of the way. You can hug your knees into your chest from that supine position. If you're in child's pose, continue for 3 breaths. If you're on your back, continue for 3 breaths. And now we're going to make a decision about how we'd like to spend our Shavasana, which are our final few minutes together in our practice. And that could be legs back up to the wall, same way you started. Could be lying on your back with any support you want, blankets, pillows covering you or underneath you, supporting you. Could be an upright seated meditation, if that's something that feels good. The point is that you allow yourself to be still. This is what Shavasana is for. Supported stillness. I mean, it's definitely more nuanced than that, but I'd say on the most simplistic, accessible level, Shavasana is for stillness. So settling into your space, relax your shoulders away from your ears, slightly tilt your chin to your chest. Whatever your body is doing, take a deep breath in the nose with me. And then open your mouth, exhale. And use that to release anything you need to let go of. You can imagine this, inhaling anything you would like to receive. Exhaling anything you would like to let go of. Inhaling to receive, exhaling to release. So if you have more time to spare today, please feel free to stay as long as you like in this current shape. If you need to move on, and start to add movement to fingertips and toes. And move your head side to side. When you're ready for more, stretching the arms overhead, breathing into the length of the body. And then exhaling to come to a side, transitioning to an upright seat. Just briefly, we'll take a moment to close out our practice together. I invite you to take your left hand against your heart, stack your right hand on top. Breathe in, grow tall. Breathing out, bind the chin to the chest. Take a moment to honor your effort and your practice with reverence and gratitude to all of our teachers, past, present, future, and to the teacher within your own heart. Namaste, yogis. All right, everyone, happy holidays, Merry Christmas, Happy Hanukkah. Thank you for being with me today and practicing. I'll be back next week on Tuesday for Vinyasa. Take care of yourselves.